When Barron Trump walked through the crowded streets of New York City, dressed in an old hoodie and faded sneakers, the world didn't stop to notice him. For once, he felt like an ordinary person, invisible to the cameras and the constant scrutiny that came with his name. It was refreshing, almost thrilling, to wander the city like a ghost, free from the expectations and assumptions that usually followed him. The anonymity allowed him to truly see the city for what it was, unfiltered, raw, and teeming with life. He found himself in a part of the city he rarely visited. The neighborhood was modest, a stark contrast to the marble and glass towers he called home. The air carried the smell of food carts, car exhaust, and autumn leaves. Barron stopped at a small park tucked between aging buildings. It was a quiet refuge in the chaos, with weathered benches and a scattering of locals who seemed at home here. He sat on a bench near an old man with a scruffy beard, wearing layers of tattered clothing. The man had a small stack of books beside him and was engrossed in one. Barron watched him for a moment, intrigued. The man looked up, sensing Barron's gaze, and offered a small smile. It wasn't the type of smile Barron was used to, calculated or insincere. This smile was genuine, warm, and entirely unassuming. Barron decided to break the silence. "What are you reading?" he asked, nodding toward the book. The man lifted the book slightly, showing its cover. "Just an old classic," he said with a gravelly voice. "Helps keep the mind sharp." Barron introduced himself simply as Barr, omitting his last name for reasons he didn't need to explain. The man nodded. "I'm Joe," he said, extending a hand that was rough and calloused. Joe assumed Barron was just another struggling kid, judging by his understated clothes and quiet demeanor. He asked if Barron had a place to stay, or if he needed directions to the nearest shelter. Barron hesitated but decided not to correct him. Instead, he asked about Joe's life. Joe opened up, sharing his story with surprising candor. He had once been a middle-class man with a family, a job, and a comfortable life. But a series of misfortunes, a layoff, medical bills, and the loss of his wife had spiraled into homelessness. The transition had been swift and unforgiving, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and a few cherished books. Barron listened intently, his heart heavy with a mix of sympathy and disbelief. He had never encountered hardship like this. His life had always been one of abundance, shielded from the struggles that Joe described. It was a sobering realization, one that left a lasting impression. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. Joe shared tips for surviving on the streets, from finding safe places to sleep to navigating the unspoken rules of homelessness. Barron absorbed every word, marveling at the resilience and resourcefulness Joe had developed. When Barron returned home that evening, the luxury of his surroundings felt almost obscene. The towering ceilings, plush furniture, and glittering chandeliers seemed excessive in light of what he had learned. Joe's story replayed in his mind, each detail stoking a fire within him. He couldn't ignore the disparity between their lives, nor could he shake the feeling that he had the power to do something about it. Over the next week, Barron returned to the park regularly, always seeking out Joe. He brought food, warm clothes, and small gifts, careful not to overwhelm or insult Joe's pride. The two developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by their conversations and mutual respect. One day, Barron asked Joe a simple question. If you could do anything, what would it be? Joe paused, a flicker of hope crossing his face. He admitted he had always dreamed of opening a small cafe. He described it in vivid detail, his voice trembling with emotion. It would be a place where anyone could come, no matter their background, and feel at home. The menu would be simple but heartfelt, and the atmosphere warm and welcoming. Barron's mind raced with possibilities. He decided to turn Joe's dream into reality. That night, Barron stayed up late in his expansive room, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. But instead of appreciating the view, his thoughts lingered on Joe's dream. The image of a small cafe with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft chatter took root in his mind. It wasn't just a wish, it was a lifeline to a man who had lost everything. Barron knew he couldn't do this alone. The next day, he approached his mother, Melania, in the family library. She looked up from her book, surprised to see him so determined. He explained Joe's story in vivid detail, his voice filled with urgency. Melania listened carefully, her expression softening. She had always taught Barron to value kindness and humility, and she saw the sincerity in his plea. "Let me meet this man," she said finally. The following day, Barron led his mother to the small park where Joe spent his afternoons. Joe was hesitant at first, his rugged exterior betraying his nervousness at meeting someone so well-dressed and poised. But Melania spoke to him with warmth and respect, quickly putting him at ease. By years later, when Barron reflected on that fateful day in the park, he realized how much it had changed him. What had started as a chance encounter had blossomed into a lifelong commitment to helping others. Second Chance's Cafe wasn't just a success. It was a testament to the power of compassion and the importance of seeing people for who they truly were. And for Joe, it was proof that even in the darkest moments, there was always a chance for a brighter future.